In northeast Thailand, an elite unit is on active service. On jungle patrol, they're hunting down armed gangs. These are the King of Tigers, a specialist ranger force experts in jungle operations. They need to stay alert. This is a live operation. Suddenly, the point man reports movement up ahead. There's contact. And the King of Tigers spring into action. This is a deadly job. In the last 5 years, 40 of their colleagues have been shot dead. But this is the reality of frontline wildlife conservation today. These men aren't patrolling territory, they're protecting tigers. The cause of this conflict is hidden deep in the vast forest complexes of northeastern Thailand. Home to one of the most beautiful and endangered big cats on the planet.
The tiger that occurs in Thailand is the Indo-Chinese tiger. And it's genetically distinct from other subspecies of tiger like the Bengal tiger or the Amur tiger. It's been adapted to live in some of the forested landscapes in Thailand.
50 years ago, over 1,000 of these magnificent creatures were roaming widely throughout Southeast Asia. But today, it's a very different story.
If the population in Thailand is fewer than 200 individuals, you're looking at not only an endangered species, but a critically endangered species.
The reason the tiger is being wiped out? Poaching. Tigers are worth far more dead than alive.
Tiger poaching is big business because the consumption of tiger body parts is big. So particularly in Vietnam and China, people are buying tiger bone, gets ground down and sold into medicine. Sometimes it even gets put into like 1 gram bags like cocaine.
For over 1,000 years, tiger parts such as bones, eyes, whiskers and teeth have been used in Chinese medicine to treat everything from insomnia and malaria to meningitis and bad skin. Most recently, tiger skins and even meat have become a symbol of serious wealth and status. A dead tiger can command over $50,000 on the black market. According to conservationists, this growing demand is pushing the Indo-Chinese tiger to the brink of extinction. In Thailand, there are now just 200 left in the wild.
Over the last 2 years, we've noticed there's been a decline in tigers in every single country across Southeast Asia. And in some countries, no tigers have been recorded for 2 years now.
Fighting to save this rare and precious tiger is the Freeland Foundation. Freeland is an international non-governmental organization funded by private donations and the US Agency for International Development. It aims to combat the illegal wildlife trade and habitat destruction.
I'm sure you're feeling it, that there's growing demands and expectations on this organization. We helped put together...
It was founded by Steve Galster, a veteran campaigner on global issues of wildlife, arms, and human trafficking.
I set up Freeland with colleagues years ago because there's a lot of injustice toward wild animals.
Based in the heart of Bangkok, Freeland draw on techniques used by specialist law enforcement agencies. Going undercover, they often provide intelligence to help local governments fight organized wildlife crime in Asia, Africa, and the Americas.
These are Indian stuff?
Yes.
How much are these?
2,000.
So, given what we're up against, We've hired people who've dealt with organized crime before. Folks from the New Scotland Yard, US FBI, US Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yeah, I've got his telephone number online and I can just...
Part of Freeland's specialist team is tiger expert Tim Redford. For the last 15 years, he's devised programs and initiatives to protect Thailand's vanishing Indo-Chinese tiger populations.
I think the threat of extinction for tigers in Thailand is a very real possibility. And every day I become more and more worried about the situation. There's just a few left in a few parks. They are becoming extinct and it's happening now.
Tim's work regularly takes him all over the country, conducting research and training programs. Just a day's drive from Freeland's office in Bangkok is the Eastern Forest Complex. Covering 6,000 square kilometers, it encompasses 5 different national parks. It is a vast, wild, untamed area of jungle. Back in 2006, Tim met with staff from all 5 of the national parks in the complex at a meeting similar to this one.
At that time we were working in Khao Yai National Park, which had just basically lost all of its tigers.
While discussing the tragic decline of tigers in the area, he was told something remarkable.
Some of the people that were on a training course with us said, "Oh, we have tigers in our park, you should come and have a look."
But the idea tigers might exist within at least one of the Eastern Forest Complex's national parks seemed unlikely.
To be quite honest, I didn't really believe him because some other conservation groups had been conducting surveys there and they said there probably weren't any tigers left.
And yet, the Freeland team couldn't help being intrigued. Could there really be more of these precious tigers in the Eastern Forest Complex?
You know, while we took it with a grain of salt, we also took it very seriously considering the population is very small.
At that time, Freeland had commitments elsewhere and couldn't pursue the story. But in 2008, Tim was in a position to return to the Eastern Forest Complex and investigate further. To protect what he found there, we can't reveal exactly where Tim went. Heading into the forest with his team, the first thing he needs to determine is whether this environment can even support a population of tigers. He spots samba deer, wild pigs, and gaur, all perfect prey for a tiger. But that in itself doesn't prove they are there. Tim heads further into the depths of the park.
And when we were there, within just a few minutes, we found tiger tracks, which is absolutely astounding.
When we first saw those, we were pretty astonished, and the rangers were really excited because it validated what they knew.
To confirm these tracks aren't just a one-off from a lone animal, Tim sets camera traps to try and discover more about this previously unknown population.
So we put them out in the forest. You have to wait for a month while they're taking the pictures.
Working off motion sensors, these cameras see everything that passes them. The longer they are left, the more they record. 20 days later, Tim and his team return and look through the images.
Hopefully there'll be a tiger on here. Oh yeah, there we go. Look at that. Big male tiger.
Yeah, I remember the first picture, we just looked at it and it was like watching your favourite football club score a goal. It was a big cheer and like, yes, we've got it.
Lo and behold, he found another tiger. And he found another and another and another, and the experts were wrong. There was a whole population of tigers in this area.
It's really something to see a tiger in its natural habitat. It makes the forest come alive, really, to know that a top predator like a tiger is still out there and still fighting for survival.
With so much material captured, the team returns to base to examine the footage and learn more about the behavior of these amazing animals. During this detailed assessment of the shots, they make an alarming discovery. The cameras show armed gangs in the tiger's territory. But how could they be there if this population was previously unknown? And could these newly discovered precious tigers already be under threat?
Our concerns when we discovered tigers in this region was that we weren't the only ones who knew or who were going to find out.
We've photographed poachers with camera traps on a fairly regular basis. We've seen people coming in with guns and gunny sacks and collecting wildlife, using weapons to shoot wildlife and traffic it out of the park.
This is a real threat. It seems that poachers are onto the precious tiger population before Freeland can protect them. They need more information. The first thing they can see is that most of the poachers aren't from Thailand, but have crept over the border from countries where massive criminal poaching syndicates operate.
We know for a fact the poachers that have been poaching tigers all across the other parts of Southeast Asia are homing in on Thailand.
Right next door in Laos and in Cambodia, pretty much all the tigers we think are gone. That's a result of very professional, sometimes mobile poaching gangs.
But then they discover something surprising.
Through our camera trapping for tigers, we went to some very remote areas in the park. We found tree stumps, we found trails where loggers had been hauling out logs and planks, and all of this made us sort of wonder, what's really going on here, you know, what's happening?
It occurs to them that perhaps these poachers don't know anything about the tigers and are actually after something else.
The thing that really was the magnetic force bringing the poachers in wasn't tigers. It was rosewood trees.
Rosewood is a rich red-colored hardwood coveted in China as a sign of wealth. Globally, it is a threatened species, and logging it has been prohibited in Thailand since 1989. The Eastern Forest Complex now contains the largest remaining stocks of Siam rosewood in Southeast Asia. But the high demand for luxury products and weak law enforcement has led to the creation of illegal logging syndicates. It is so valuable that in 2011, a single rosewood bed sold for $1 million. This sort of profit attracts large-scale, organized crime.
The illegal rosewood trade is so lucrative, influential backers behind this are willing to put up the money to pay for these forays into the forest so the poachers can go in for a week or 2 weeks to do this illegal logging.
Well, the price of rosewood has gone up quite substantially. It's now approaching up to over $50,000 per cubic meter, even up to $100,000 per cubic meter.
Freeland learn how criminal gangs are systematically and deliberately targeting this high-value timber throughout Thailand.
The modus operandi of these poaching teams right now is that a spotter will go into the forest with a GPS, he will find the rosewood trees, mark it, come back out, and he'll sell those positions of that rosewood tree
These GPS coordinates alone can fetch up to $1,000.
So they'll go sneak into the forest with AK-47s, drugs to keep them awake, and machinery that allows them to cut these trees down without anybody hearing. So they've got mufflers, and they've got specialists that come in as part of the gang who can cut these trees into perfect planks that you could practically sell to a lumber yard right away.
The fact that poachers don't seem to be deliberately targeting tigers is good news for Freeland. But the fear is, if these illegal loggers do see a tiger, they will kill it.
They're out there hunting everything. They're hunting for food, for subsistence while they're in the forest. They're also opportunistic hunting and just taking anything that they can get.
It's only going to be a matter of time before they realize there's tigers around. They're going to lay snares and traps and go after the tigers.
Freeland realized the only way to save the tigers is to stop these well-armed, sophisticated criminal gangs. But that is no easy task.
These were AK-47 gun-toting, scary poachers. The kind who usually you would employ an army to stop.
They've got all types of equipment from mobile phones, radios, GPSs, and even satellite phones. They go into an area, they basically are like a sort of mini militia, and they take over.
The worry for Freeland is that all that stands between the tigers and these illegal logging gangs are the park rangers. These local recruits earn just $155 a month, working on temporary government contracts with no insurance or funding for their families if they are injured or killed.
Most of the rangers had very little in the way of formal training. You know, a lot of them were just given a uniform and a gun and told to go out in the forest.
Compared with the well-equipped criminal syndicates, the rangers are poorly trained, outmanned, and outgunned.
They're coming up against large criminal groups, 40, 50, or even more people. And these people are extremely well armed. They have war weapons, and they have the willingness to shoot to kill and protect the products that they're trying to traffic out of the forest.
As gangs flood in looking for rosewood, patrolling in the parks starts to become a deadly occupation. Shootouts are common.
The standard technique when the rangers come into contact with poacher gangs is that the poachers just fire madly all over the place with a full clip from an AK-47.
The consequences for the rangers are appalling. Since the discovery of the tigers in the Eastern Forest Complex, in separate incidents, over 40 rangers have been killed and 49 more injured. It is evident they can't cope.
They're trying their hardest, but they've got limited resources, they've got limited staff who have got limited training, and so we're just trying to sort of help them to help protect these tigers.
Despite this horrific onslaught, there is one bit of good news. There is no evidence the poachers have discovered the tigers yet.
What we're worried about is this escalating into a mini war. And we're going to lose the trees, we're going to lose the tigers, and we're going to lose a lot of people, too.
"7 years after the discovery of this unknown tiger population, and despite the rangers' best efforts, the situation is becoming critical. So the Freeland Foundation decide to use their training and law enforcement skills to fight fire with fire. In this desperate battle to save the tiger, They want to set up a tough new fighting force. Freeland already employs security experts, like Steve King, who has just the right experience to make this happen.
So to set up a special unit like that, it's really kind of a paramilitary force. You need folks who are from the paramilitary background. So we got people like Steve who had done that for Australia and other countries where the Australian military had operated.
Working alongside Steve King is Mark Bowman.
Okay, the reason why we're teaching you this is so that you can live.
Between them, they have 40 years military service with the Royal Australian Regiment and have deployed in Malaysia, East Timor, Cambodia, and Iraq. Experts in jungle warfare, they are ideal for training a force capable of taking on the poachers.
They have to be paramilitary because, you know, we're asking these people to go out in the field and, you know, risk getting shot at.
Freeland suggests the concept to the Thai authorities, who embrace the idea. They hold an internal selection process looking for candidates to join the newly named King of Tigers Protection Unit. From 300 rangers, they shortlist 70. They're then sent to Mark and Steve, who put them through their own selection.
To set up a special unit like this, you have to make it competitive. And you don't want just anybody off the street.
From those 70 officers, Mark and Steve handpick a core of 25. These hopefuls will be put through a further, even more grueling and intensive course. Only if they pass will they become King of Tigers.
From that 25, we then ran 8 weeks worth of training, which covered basically the forest and the patrolling in the forest and the operations there and the tactics, techniques and procedures that they needed. A 6-figure grid reference is only accurate to 100 metres.
They are taught specialist navigation techniques, essential for operating in such a hostile environment.
So you bring the roamer into the square like this, and bring the corner up, so it touches the feature like that. Always within 100 metres.
Using those skills, they then learn to move through the forest with stealth. Silent communications are vital.
We've taught them a number of hand signals, so when they are patrolling, they can move quietly. In the past, we'd identify that a lot of the rangers patrolling through there would be yelling and talking, and the poachers are a lot more quiet than them, and so the poachers will run away.
Aim for the head if he's on top of one of your partners, right?
Classroom lessons are backed up with practical training exercises. Starting off with simulators.
This hand, like you punch it in there.
After the simulations, it's live fire.
One not fully done.
Take it back and eat it. Okay,
For the King of Tigers to make a real difference, they must be able to arrest poachers without risk to themselves in this tough terrain.
If they're bad people with guns, just get them on the ground. Who cares? They get money and leech points.
It's not like the savannas of Africa where you can sit there on top of a hill with your binoculars and to really identify what's going on. You have to have the boots on the ground under the canopy, seeing what's happening.
They are taught that with limited numbers and resources, the safest and most successful way to take down poachers is through ambush.
Somewhere between here and back where the range was, pick a piece of ground. And you need a capture zone and a capture group and a route you can make back to your firm base.
Another technique they are taught is surprising poachers at dawn.
it's a small camp, maybe they're only a 5-man team, can he take the camp down?
For this to work, everyone in the unit must know their job.
If he could take the camp down, then they'd slowly move into an extended line. Then they'd move to what we call the rush line. It's an invisible line where you can't sneak up any further. The team leader rushes in and everyone follows as well. They stay in the extended line. They take down the camp, the rest of the poachers in the camp. The other people on the flanks, the other rangers, they continue to clear through at least 25 to 50 metres.
As training progresses, it becomes increasingly clear just how much the King of Tigers are needed. Whilst the paramilitary experts have been training the rangers, Freeland's tiger expert Tim Redford and his team have been struggling to monitor the tigers accompanied by park rangers.
There's armed loggers and poachers almost everywhere, and what was just a simple walk in the forest a few years ago is now a really dangerous thing to do.
In September 2013, the situation takes a dramatic turn.
On one of our surveys, our staff were in the forest with a team of rangers, and during the walk to set the cameras, they found some very, very fresh tracks in the mud.
Multiple boot tracks suggest a large gang of poachers are nearby. The team split up. The main ranger unit pursue the poachers, and the Freeland staff head back to base.
So after about 2 hours of splitting up, the rangers ran into a group of loggers.
Away from base and medical help, this is a dangerous situation.
A gunfight ensued, during which time one of the rangers was killed, 2 of the loggers were caught, and the rest of them managed to escape.
The situation is spiraling out of control. More and more illegal loggers are flooding into Thailand's forests from Cambodia.
We're now seeing groups of 50 to 100 poachers at one time who are armed to the teeth. They've got to be a serious threat to the tigers as well.
With the casualty rate rising, the Thai government has no choice but to call in the army to secure and police border crossings. This is the environment the newly qualified King of Tigers will deploy straight into. In October 2013, after 8 intense weeks of training, 22 rangers graduate, becoming the first King of Tigers unit. Straight away, they're put on an operational footing.
Well, it is a war, and it should be treated as the very serious situation that it is.
From the start, the King of Tigers make a difference. They work as a rapid response unit, deploying whenever and wherever they are needed to support rangers in trouble.
Each scenario is different, so it could be either a short-term operation, where they specifically know that illegal loggers or poachers are using a certain area, so they just quickly move in there, crack down. It might be a deterrent where the villagers see the units go in there, so they know, oh, we better stay away.
Operating on Thailand's lakes and rivers, they patrol vast areas looking for poachers. Working covertly, they go into villages, gathering intel and arresting suspects known to be helping criminal gangs. And wherever they deploy, They use their skills and expertise to train up the local park rangers so they can deal with these situations themselves in the future.
During the first 3 months that the King of Tigers deployed, they trained 470 local rangers to assist them in the operations. They confiscated $2.5 million worth of rosewood, arrested 80 poachers.
Thanks to the King of Tigers, the Freeland team are able to continue their tiger monitoring project. They're looking to establish how many tigers there might be and learn more about their health and habitat. To gather this data, they rely heavily on camera traps.
Well, there's a lot of considerations in camera trapping. You have to really know the landscape well enough to know where tigers are likely to occur. So otherwise, potentially wasting your time. Once we've identified an area that's likely to have tigers, we'll place the camera at tiger height. And in a lot of cases, we'll place cameras on either side of the trail so we can get a full profile of their stripe pattern. We'll also distance the camera on a tree that's about maybe a meter to a couple meters from the trail so there's sufficient time for the camera to turn on and photograph the animal before it goes out of frame.
The camera traps need to be securely fastened to withstand the scrutiny of some of the jungle's larger inhabitants.
Well, we found out very quickly in some of our first camera trapping trips that the elephants are very curious. Sometimes the elephants will just come up and give it a sniff and, poke at it a little bit, but not too much. Other times they'll move the camera. It's a bit discouraging when an elephant moves the camera and we come back a month later and there's 1,000 pictures of the ground.
Over time, the Freeland team learned to recognize individual tigers.
Because tiger stripes are very similar to fingerprints and that they're unique to each individual, we're able to develop a profile with which we can reference future tiger photos. This female we've been following for several years. Has a pretty distinctive, almost wishbone pattern here.
Eric and the team carefully monitor the movement of these individual animals.
We see which tigers are in which camera traps, where they're occurring, how far they range, how they're using the landscape, so seeing whether a population's going up or down, see how tiger behavior is changing over time.
By the end of 2013, the Freeland team can find no evidence that any tigers have been lost. In fact, all the indicators are good.
We're very excited, especially because some of the individuals that we've seen a few years ago are still being detected in the camera trap, so we're still identifying them. They're still out there, and it's always good to come back month after month to see that they're still there.
It appears that between them, Freeland and the King of Tigers are doing a great job protecting this secret tiger population. But then, the poachers begin hitting back.
A group of poachers were arrested in a park. They were taken to the police station, they were processed and detained.
The arresting unit were not King of Tigers, but local rangers.
And after all of this, the rangers went home. And one of the rangers was singled out and he was assassinated. He was shot in the back of the head.
Alongside assassinations, the illegal loggers start operating in deeper parts of the forest. They don't know it, but they are getting ever closer to the secret population of tigers.
They're cutting deeper into the parks and into some of these biodiversity hotspots, into key tiger habitat. So that's a significant concern.
Even worse, the gangs are now operating in bigger numbers, and the park rangers are running increasing risks.
You have to be very careful. If you go running after one of these guys, he can just jump over a ditch and then hunker down and wait for you to follow up behind him.
This happened to one ranger while pursuing a poacher in early 2015.
As the ranger bore down on him, he just waited and waited. At the last minute, he stood up and shot him straight in the chest.
In this deadly climate, Tim Redford and the Freeland team are forced to scale back their tiger monitoring operations.
We've completely stopped our overnight surveys where we'd go into deep parts of the forest and camp out while we're setting camera traps for the tigers because it's just too dangerous. We want to know what's going on in there. We want to see that the tigers are there and we want to see that they're not being poached.
With Freeland unable to monitor the safety of the tigers and the park rangers feeling desperately threatened, an SOS is sent out to the King of Tigers. This footage is from that live operation. In their base up country, the elite unit kit up and prepare to move out. They've got a long drive ahead, and until they get to the location, they won't know the details of the mission.
Once the call goes out, within a few hours, they can be up there in several four-wheel drive pickup trucks, and they can go into any park anywhere in the country.
Arriving at a ranger substation, a briefing is set up. Intel from the park rangers has identified a large criminal logging gang operating in the heart of the tigers' territory.
They get a quick briefing on the ground to understand really what's happening, and then they'll figure out, okay, are we going to go in and arrest these poachers?
The King of Tigers develop a three-stage plan. Move into the forest under cover of darkness. Set up observation posts and monitor the loggers' movements. Then raid the camp. With the plan in place, the King of Tigers move out. After 3 hours of marching in pitch darkness, by dawn, they are close enough to their target to set up camp. But first, they have to secure the area.
They move in at 4 points of the clock, 12, 3, 6, and 9. They wait for a while, quiet when they get there. Once they identify that there's no other poachers or anything in the area, they take it in turns to set up their hammock.
For the next few days, this becomes their base of operations.
Their main mission, first couple of days in the operations, was to conduct a reconnaissance of the area.
This involves some recon and some surveillance of a logging camp, and then waiting at some of the choke points where the poachers are expected to come out of the forest.
From their concealed positions, they scout how the loggers get in and out of the forest, note their routine and numbers. They see the poachers are using established trails to move through the forest. The King of Tigers realize these well-trodden pathways will provide them with perfect ambush positions. And after 48 hours, they have enough intel to move into action.
They follow them up for a couple of days, and at one stage when they were just about to go over a ridge, they encountered a large number of poachers.
But critically, though the King of Tigers had spotted the poachers hadn't spotted them.
The forward poacher was just suddenly surprised by them. They managed to capture him, but he'd yelled out.
His warning alerts the other poachers, who melt into the forest. The unit give chase. 5 get away. But they do capture one more, who can be interrogated for vital intel.
We don't want the rangers to go out there and kill people. We want them to go and capture them so they get more information that leads up the chain.
With the captives secure, the King of Tigers move in on the poachers' camp, hunting for evidence. Then they escort the prisoners back to HQ, where they are questioned before being handed over to the police and charged. For the King of Tigers, it's a great success. They've taken down a logging camp and disrupted a criminal gang. It's still early days, but with the establishment and increasing success of the elite King of Tigers, there is now growing hope that the battle to save Thailand's last tigers can be won.
The King of Tigers are making a difference. The Thai government really see that as well. They want to actually expand the ranks of it.
Since the establishment of the King of Tigers, there is no evidence any tigers have been lost from the Eastern Forest Complex.
I think the King of Tigers have helped slow things down. And just like with other aspects of the wildlife trade, that's sometimes the best you can do, is to buy time for that species, for public awareness and demand reduction to take place.
Building on this, Freeland continue to work hard in Thailand, doing everything they can to save the tigers. But given the scale of the problem, more people need to get involved.
Tigers in Thailand need protection. They need people with the skills to conduct patrols. They need sufficient personnel to protect them. And those people at the front lines need to have the resources that they need.
Freeland's next aim is to take the fight beyond Thailand and address the demand for tiger products created in other countries. But unless the Vietnamese and Chinese governments outlaw these products, this criminal trade will continue.
The trade in tigers is cross-border trade, so the other thing Freeland is trying to do is bring investigators from these different countries together. The crooks are networking, law enforcement has to network also.
It is a long and difficult game, but thanks to Freeland, the bravery of the Rangers, and the King of Tigers, there is at least a chance that this secret population of rare and precious animals will survive.
Starting from when we first found tigers in the Eastern Forest Complex, the more we've looked, the more we've found. We've seen a lot of activity in recent months, including males and females together in the same spot. So we're very hopeful that maybe sometime in the future we'll see little cubs running around.